Alright, let's talk about Standard. For those of you who are unfamiliar, there are a bunch of different types of tournament Magic that Wizards of the Coast sponsors, basically, like different formats, to let people know what they're playing. When you're playing with your friends, you usually don't have a format in mind, you're just playing with whatever cards you have. But when you're playing in a tournament, everyone has to be on the same page and have the same limitations, etc. Standard is the most commonly played format. It's you play a deck of 60 cards that you make, but cards had to have been printed within the last 2 years. So, I mean, I'm recording this in 2012. I can use cards in Innistrad because that was released last year, and I can use cards in Return to Ravnica because that was just released. So, there are good and bad things about this. Good because not everyone has all the old cards. Some of the cards they were printing then were really powerful in some ways. I have one of them with me. This is a Bayou. For those of you who aren't aware of the original dual land cycle, like, you've probably heard dual lands in the context of like Glacial Fortress or Dragon Skull Summit or something. There are many different types of dual lands. This is a Bayou. It's a forest swamp. It taps for either black or green. There are no drawbacks. It never enters the battlefield tapped unless there's something strange going on. Yeah. It's a forest and a swamp, so anything that affects swamps affects bayous. Bayous run about at least $50. At least $50. So you can imagine, and not that many people play Legacy, which is where bayous are played, and EDH, I guess. But nevertheless, you can't expect people to be able to acquire some of the cards that were in one of the first few print runs of Magic, like for tournaments. Can you imagine how expensive bayous would be if like they were necessary to build a really good deck? I mean, I could see them being $500. I don't know. But anyway, so that's one advantage of Wizards of the Coast making Standard. It's because it lets cards be available to players so they can actually play in these tournaments with good decks. Another obvious advantage for Wizards of the Coast in a business sense is that Standard makes an incentive to players, even players with large collections, to keep on buying the new set so they can get access to the cards that, you know, they'll have to play in Standard. I mean, you know, it's well known that Wizards is basically printing money. Magic is very expensive. Anyway, another advantage is that the face of the Standard metagame is always changing. Like, the top deck is always going to be different. Like, if you really don't like playing in Standard 1 year, you just have to wait a year and it'll be different. Or even just wait until the next set is released and it'll have a big impact on Standard. So that's good. But unfortunately, it's not always that good. The problem with Standard, as opposed to Legacy, or Limited too. Limited refers to drafts and the such, like where you open a set number of booster packs and you build a deck. Disadvantage is that sometimes a certain strategy or a certain set of cards or a certain card is just so powerful that it will completely dominate Standard. And that sucks. Like, it really sucks. Talk about tournaments where you're playing the same deck. You're playing a deck against the same deck over and over and over again, like 8 rounds in a row or something. That's the type of thing that can happen in Standard. Honestly, it's a recurring problem, and I don't know if there's any good way to fix it, well, or any feasible way to fix it. Tell Wizards, come on guys, stop sucking, print better sets. Before I started playing Standard, there was this deck called Jund, and Jund was good because it was cheap. Most of the cards were uncommons or commons. You could get a hold of them easily. It relied on the power of Bloodbraid Elf, which is, it's 4 mana for 3/2 haste. So, you know, 4 mana, 3/2 haste, pretty good. Cascade. So when you cast it, you flip over cards until you hit a card that costs less than Bloodbraid Elf. Often, this was Blightning, which is a 3-mana, target player discards 2 cards and takes 3 damage. So, you're paying 4 mana for a 3/2 haste, and your opponent takes 3 damage off the bat and discards 2 cards. That was Jund. Like, it was everywhere. The power of Bloodbraid Elf into Blightning or into Maelstrom Pulse, or there were, like, any card in the deck. The power of Bloodbraid Elf plus Cascade was just so ridiculous, and it just dominated everything. It was actually so bad to the point where people were playing cards in their main deck like Flash Freeze, which is counter target red or green spell. So that type of thing tends to happen in Standard. Another example was about a year later when Caw-Blade dominated. Caw-Blade was really stupid. Like, that was just a case of a few cards being much more powerful than anything else in the format. That deck played Jace the Mind Sculptor, which, in case you haven't heard of him, he's kind of the most powerful Planeswalker ever printed by a mile. No other Planeswalker comes remotely close to the power level of Jace. Also, Stoneforge Mystic. Stoneforge Mystic itself, I don't think, was too much of a problem. Stoneforge Mystic, when it comes into play, search your library for an equipment card, put it into your hand, and you get to tap it and pay 2 mana to put that equipment on the battlefield, or any equipment, actually. Stoneforge wasn't too much of a problem, but when you're talking about Batterskull, so Batterskull, living weapon, it comes attached to a 0/0. +4/+4, vigilance, and lifelink. Like, you play a turn 2 Stoneforge Mystic, you fetch up Batterskull, you tap it the next turn to have a turn 3 4/4 vigilance lifelink equipment. Like, it's attached to a creature. How do you deal with that? That was so stupid. Anyway, so that's kind of a symptom of just people playing the best cards and sticking them in one deck. And that's what happens in Standard, and that's kind of a problem. A year later, Delver, the endless Delver mirrors, not nearly as bad as Caw-Blade. They didn't have to ban cards this time around, but 3/2 flying for 1 mana. Delver of Secrets, like, how is that fair? It might be fair if it's in, like, green, but green doesn't have flying, so that wouldn't happen anyway. Yeah, people are just playing the most aggressive forms of Delver and attacking each other all day. Like, that's... I played in a tournament once that was mostly just Delver mirrors. I was playing Delver, I was playing against Delver most of the time. And let me tell you, it came down to draws a lot. I feel like that deck took a lot of skill to pilot, because, like, you needed the exact right cards at the exact right time, and you needed to tap your mana perfectly in order to get the most out of it. But playing the mirror was really grueling, and you're fighting over the slimmest of advantages. Like, sometimes you just ponder wrong. You ponder, look at the top 3, rearrange them as you like, shuffle if you want, and draw a card. Sometimes you'd ponder wrong, like you'd put a card on top and then a card on middle and the card on bottom and put it back and draw a card, and then realize the next turn that the next 2 cards should have been flipped and you lose because of it. And oh man, Delver was so stressful to play. It's a problem with Standard. On the other hand, you get away with some pretty shady stuff. Like, you get to play really bad cards like Seraph of Dawn. Seraph of Dawn isn't that bad, but, I mean, if you're talking about playing cards in tournaments... Oh, I played Brindlebore in a tournament, in a Standard tournament. It's 3 mana, 2/2, sacrifice it to gain 4 life. I top-8'd a Star City event with it. Also, like, playing mono red, I love aggro decks, and in Standard, people are doing, like, slow things and clunky. It's not like Legacy where things are really fast. So you have, like, people are taking time to set up whatever they're doing, and meanwhile I'm just playing 1 mana creatures and attacking them. So, I mean, it has its pluses and minuses, but It's not nearly as fun as Legacy. It's kind of fun in the fact that you get to use really bad cards and still be able to play with them. What? People are playing Deceiver Exarch without the combo just to untap their Birthing Pods. Oh man, that's another thing. The Birthing Pod decks in Standard. Maybe I'll talk about that next. Birthing Pod's pretty awesome. All right, thanks for tuning in.